Dear brothers, today and sisters, today let us talk about African theology. African theology. Myself, I used to hear a lot about African theology, but without knowing anything about African theology. But now I realize that African theology is very important, and for us, in order to understand what African theology is all about, dear brothers and sisters, let us start by defining it. African theology, according to me, you know, is a theological discourse, upon God or about God and everything related, to God, you know, done not only by Africans but also non-African whose reflection is shaped by, African reality. In this way, African theologian is the one who is in touch, with the reality. And to add my definition, let us say that African theology, springs from, reality. It's not a pure intellectual exercise. African theology is a commitment. It is a commitment. And then, dear brother, after defining African theology, let us speak about the essence of African theology. So there is no African theology without the four elements. The first element is what we call African traditional religion. The second is the Bible. The third is independent churches, African independent churches. And the fourth is this conference, done in Africa with regard to, the churches. These are the four elements which make African theology. And then our discourse, our debate is not on the existence of African theology, because we know that the African theology does, exist. And for that, let me just, use the word of Henri, Henri Sauvier, African theologian, who said that, there is a need for Africana theologia africana, which seek, to interpret Jesus. This African theology seek, to interpret Jesus to the Africans, so that Jesus, in such a way that Jesus, can feel at the home, can feel at the home in this new faith. Let me say that again. According to Henri Sauer, there is a need for African theology which seek to interpret Jesus, and to interpret Jesus not only, outside of Africa, but within Africa in such a way that Jesus feels at the home in the new faith. And for us Africans, to feel at the home means that to feel at the home means, this continuity, this continuity that it should exist always, this continuity between traditional life and the Christian faith. That is, to feel at home. But the idea of Henri Sauer is very important, because we have to interpret Jesus so that Jesus can feel at the home in this new faith. And that is what, Henri Sauer put forward. But dear brothers, and sisters, let me use inclusive language. The reason why African theology is very important, apart from the definition that we have just, shared with all of you, we have the idea of, liberation theology. Liberation theology. We have the idea of, black, theology and reconstruction theology. So to speak, a little about the liberation theology, it goes back to the, it goes back to the, people of Israel, who were in bondage there in Egypt, and then through Moses, they were, free. And in Latin America, they used this paradigm in order to develop, their liberation theology. So, liberation theology, in this sense, is a political and social movement within the church which seeks to interpret Jesus, through the experience of oppression, domination. And this idea of domination is very important when we come to liberation theology. Because according to Hugh Asserman, in one of his books written in 1975, he said that the essence of liberation theology is this idea of denouncing, denouncing domination. So what produces, liberation theology is this idea of being dominated. So, dear brother, when we come to, reconstruction theology, promoted by Jesse Mugabe, Kamana, promoted by also, Villavicencio, a Southern African theologian, they say that there is a need to shift, to shift from this idea of resistance, liberation theology to reconstruction, theology. And when we speak about reconstruction theology, for example, Masewa tries to understand reconstruction theology basing, his argument on, unity, and the need, to take, responsibility. And the Masewa also, points, I think a very interesting point, which is, reconciliation. There is no reconstruction theology if we are not reconciled first with ourselves and with others. So that's what we call, reconstruction theology. Just to sum up, my argument. But it's very important for us to understand that. And then when we come to, okay, black theology. Let me say now something about the black theology. There is an African, theologian, Southern African theologian, Alan Boesak. Alan Boesak, in one of his books, Black, and Reformed, written in 1984, he says that, black theology emerges out of experience of oppression, And this idea is very important because this idea of Alan Boesak agrees with, the idea of James Cone in his book, Theology, Black Theology of Liberation. According to these two authors, black theology, we cannot speak about, black theology without the love and justice of God. And then for Alan Boesak, the love, and the justice of God within the black theology, is a concrete reality. It's not a romantic or sentimental love. It's a concrete love, And according to him, when we speak about self-love, which is, very important within a black theology, means that, hate, according to him, many people interpret in this way that hate, for white and love for black. But Alan Boesak says within the black theology that self-love, which is very important in the black theology, means, that we are not, we do not hate white by the simple fact of being white. We hate their enslavement, their oppression. That's the argument put forward by, Alan Boesak. But when we come to James Cone, which is who is also one of the promoters of black theology, he said that, black theology affirms that, what did he say? Black theology affirms that, affirms the blackness of God, so that liberation in this case or within black theology may be understood as a process of becoming, black, with God. Then, dear brothers and sisters, let us move on to, quickly to African, traditional religion. As you know very well, African traditional religion is based upon four elements. The first element is God. The second element is ancestral, spirit. The third is this idea of good and evil. And the fourth is humanity. When we come to God, the concept of God within the African traditional religion is very important because, God is understood as a creator. God is understood as a creator within, traditional religion. Before even, the arrival of the colonizers, we Africans, we have that idea of, God who is, creator. But now when we come to ancestral, spirit, and first of all, let us, let us stop for a moment here. Ancestral spirit, ancestral, according to John Poby, ancestors are those people who, in spite of dying, they have, the power, they have supernatural power, on us, living, living. People who are alive. That's what, what Johnny Poby says. According to Johnny Poby, again, ancestors, are very important within traditional religion because they act, in favor of God and in the place of God. When we come to good and evil, they say that, we are going to experience good things if we, venerate, somehow the ancestor very well. When we who are alive, we respect, them. And then humanity is very important within Africa traditional religion because of that idea of, Johnny Beat. I can sum up with the idea of Johnny Beat, or even, Mercy Amba Odoyoye. For Johnny Mbipi, I am, because we are, or therefore we are. I am, therefore we are. Since you are, therefore I am. Or the argument of Mercy Amba Odoyoye, whereby, life is recognized to be, life in community. That is, the argument of Mercy Amba Odoyoye. And then, sorry, I forgot to speak about the attributes of God within, African traditional religion. Justice. This is very important. And you see very well that this justice, which is attributed to God, agrees with the argument of, this idea of justice, is put forward by Gabriel Setelion, an African theologian. And this idea of justice agrees with, what Alan Boesak says, Vicenzo Valesenzio, Villa Vicencio, an African theologian who speaks about justice when he speaks about reconstruction theology. Even, Alan Boesak when he speaks about black theology. Even, Hugh Asserman when he speaks about liberation, theology. So this idea of justice is very important. And then, dear brother, let us move on to Christology. But before I move to Christology, let me see if I forgot something very important when we come to theology. No. So let us go back. Let us move now to Christology. So, dear brothers, I think you should agree, or you agree with me, that Christ, for us Africans, he was not known among us, African people. We know God. We know God as Gabriel Satelion says. We know God. And this God that we know, we name him in different ways. But naming God in different way, it doesn't apply polytheism within, African, communities. But okay, let us say Christology. Jesus was not known amongst us, African people. Then there was a need, to understand Jesus among us, Africans. And the first attempt, was put forward by John Mbid. Even, when we come to Christology of, Kofi Appiah-Kubi. There's also African theologian who speaks about, the titles of Christ. He speaks about, Christ as a liberator, redeemer, healer, and so on. He brings, all those Christological titles, which makes a lot of sense for us, here in Africa, especially this idea of healer, per excellence, like Jesus is healer per excellence according to Kofi Appiah-Kubi. But now, here in the Christology, there are two ideas, which are very important. The first idea is to understand Christ as an ancestor. This idea of Christ as an ancestor is well developed within the Christology of, Benedict Buju. in his book, written in 1992, this idea of African theology in its social context. So, Benedetto Bush, in this book written in 1992, on page 70, 71, 72, 73, he brings the idea of proto ancestor. Christ is a proto ancestor. The whole issue is that if Christ is ancestor, as Charles Nyamiti says, because for Charles Nyamiti, Christ is ancestor. Christ is an ancestor, and the ancestorship of Christ, according to Charles Nyamiti, is biological, is biological. But when we come to the ancestorship of Christ, according to Benedetto Bush, it's not a biological, because for Benedetto Bush, if Christ, is ancestor, then is not an ancestor, but ancestor per excellence, the firstborn, of all creation. He's, the first ancestor, and the ancestorship in Africa finds, its high point in this, ancestor per excellence, that is, Christ. So this idea of Christ as an ancestor was developed not only by Benedetto Bush, even Johnny Bobby, Charles Nyamiti, and how do you call it, that guy? Kama now also say something about Christ as an ancestor, but especially I'm forgetting one. Okay. So then let us go to guest Christology. Guest Christology is also an attempt to understand, Jesus, Jesus Christ. And this idea of guest Christology was promoted by many African theologians as well. But, like above all, a Nigerian, Ben Udo. Ben Odo, as a Nigerian, tries to understand guest Christology, basing, his argument on a Gospel of Luke and Acts of Apostles. According to him, there is a need, dear brothers and sisters, to introduce Christ again in Africa. First of all, Christ cannot be forced, Christ cannot be forced. That's why, according to him, the starting point for our Christology is guest. Christ must be met, as a guest, as a foreign, And dear brothers and sisters, there is something very important in this guest Christology. According to Ben Udo, we cannot just, understand Christ as a Lord. If at the first glimpse we understand Christ as a Lord, then we are going to miss the target. First of all, he has to be guest, and then there is a trajectory. From guest he becomes king, and then the Lord. When it becomes the Lord, then it makes a lot of sense for us Africans, because first of all he was, guest. That is the argument of Ben Udo. So, dear brothers and sisters, what else I can say about it? But actually, myself, I am a bit confused, because there are many things, in my mind, and now I cannot. Oh, let me speak now about enculturation, And myself, I was, somehow, not confused, but let me say, when we speak about enculturation, then we have adaptation. We know that enculturation is the meat, the meat of culture and the faith. And if you see very well, there is a book, written by many authors, many authors, entitled Enculturation in South Africa, context. Those many authors, they try to understand what enculturation is all about. And this book actually was written in 2000. If you see very well, on page 7, if I am not mistaken, and on page 120. First of all, on page 7 of the book, the author says that the components of enculturation is the reformulation, re-expression, of Christianity in the terms of the receiving culture. So we as Africans, when we are receiving, Christianity is reformulated, is re-expressed so that can make sense within our culture, our milieu. And then when we come to adaptation, for me, I agree more with enculturation, because adaptation is what? Adaptation is this evolutionary process, whereby the elements, within Christianity, are adjusted, so that they can be suited, in this new milieu, in this milieu, in this, environment. But now, enculturation also, okay, that is the idea of the authors of the book Enculturation in a Southern African context. But now, when we come, on a page 120 of the same book, the authors, speak about something very important, which is the African spirituality, African spirituality. And one of the what? One of the main element of African spirituality is this idea of community. And according to the authors, this this dimension of this communitarian dimension of the African spirituality is very important, because it embraces not only those who are alive, but also those who have passed away. And that is the whole idea of spirituality in our